Ever spent hours wrestling with the dreaded phrase "make it pop" from a client whose main color is beige? Yeah, we've all been there. Selecting colors can often feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. Today, I'll show you how to simplify the process and easily create color palettes your clients will love using straightforward techniques I've refined from over hundreds of projects. Plus, I'm going to show you how to crack an impossible problem that drives every designer a little nuts when selecting colors for the web. You know, when I first started building websites back in the late 90s, I know, practically the Jurassic period of web design, choosing colors was easy-ish. We had exactly 216 web-safe colors. Anything beyond this magical palette was risky territory. Fast forward to today, and we've got millions of colors at our fingertips, literally. But ironically, more choices can just mean more opportunities to mess things up. So, are web-safe colors still a thing, or is it just nostalgic trivia? Today, clinging to a web-safe palette is like insisting on using floppy disks for file transfers. Fun for retro appeal? Yes. Practical? Not so much. But, and this is the important part, the principle behind web-safe colors is more relevant than ever. And that principle is simple. Your design doesn't exist in a perfect design environment. It exists in a messy, unpredictable, real world of different devices, browsers, and user settings. Here are 5 color selection principles I've developed over 25 years that you can apply immediately. First, always test your colors at 80% and 120% brightness, because that's the range they'll appear across different devices. Second, never use pure black text on pure white backgrounds. Use a shade of black like 333333 on a shade of white like F9, F9, F9 to reduce eye strain and create a more sophisticated look. I'm not sure how well you can see the difference in the video, but there is a subtle one. Third, for text on colored backgrounds, increase font weight by 1 level compared to what you'd use on white to maintain readability. Fourth, light text on dark backgrounds needs to be slightly thicker than dark text on light backgrounds, so you want to increase the font weight by 2 levels. Again, this helps with readability, especially with smaller text. And fifth, when using color to indicate state changes like hover effects, maintain at least a 30% difference in either hue, saturation, or brightness. Which option works the best depends on the color. This brings us to the question, with millions of colors, how exactly should you start your color selection process? Well, there are 2 types of color selection processes. One where the client knows exactly what they want, and the other that actually happens in reality. First, let's talk about working with limited brand colors. Clients will often hand you a logo and say, "Make the website match our brand." But when you look closer, you realize they've given you exactly one color to work with. The good news, you don't need to reinvent their color, just strategically expand on it. Start by conducting what I call a color audit. Get every piece of brand material they have, from business cards to billboards to even the founder's favorite tie. Anything that might indicate what colors they've been using beyond just the logo. Rate each color on usability and the mood it sets. These colors become your foundation for the website's palette, giving you a solid starting point that maintains the brand consistency. But what about brand colors that look terrible on screens? Yeah, they exist. You know, like neon green, that lovely color that single-handedly traumatized an entire generation of designers who lived through GeoCities. Or dark, low-contrast combinations like navy blue on black, or pure bright red, or certain greens which can appear overly harsh. You get the idea. Here's my go-to solution for dealing with these. Create a digital translation of their brand colors rather than using them directly. Adjust saturation down by 10 to 15% and brightness up by 5 to 10%. The colors maintain brand recognition while performing better across all screen displays. You may need to tweak the percentages a little based on the colors, but this technique works every time. Now, sometimes you get the dream scenario, creating a color palette from scratch. But this freedom comes with its own challenges. Where do you find fresh, meaningful colors? Instagram scroll benches? Maybe, but let's focus. Start with these client discovery questions that go beyond just, what colors do you like? For instance, who's your target audience? Colors that appeal to retirees, such as soft, muted colors and earthy tones, differ from those that attract Gen Z who like bright, bold, contrasting colors. Another question is, how do you want people to feel when interacting with your brand? Energized, calm, trustworthy? And industry expectations matter more than many designers admit. Financial websites tend to use blue because it signals trust and stability. Try pitching a pink banking site and watch your client's face. Once I've determined a primary color for the client, I head over to ColorSpace to generate additional palette options. This gives me a solid foundation to start, but remember, the strategic thinking's still on you. Whether you're expanding on color assets or building from the ground up, I recommend limiting your color palette to 3 colors, plus tints and shades of those colors and neutrals, because it improves aesthetics and makes the site look more professional and sophisticated compared to the rainbow effect, which may appear chaotic. It reduces complexity, making design decisions easier. It enhances the user experience, reducing visual clutter that can sometimes lead to confusion. It supports accessibility and readability as it allows for sufficient contrast between colors, which is critical to accessibility. It enables strategic use of accent colors without overwhelming the overall design. And it simplifies the visual hierarchy. So let's talk briefly about visual hierarchy, aka how to actually use these colors. Here's the easiest rule to follow, probably invented by someone who got tired of guessing: the 60-30-10 principle. What exactly does that mean? 60% should be the primary color, which should dominate the overall look of the website. This typically involves larger header and footer areas and major design elements. It creates the unifying theme and backdrop for the entire website. 30% should be the secondary color, which should provide a contrast to the primary color and be used for backgrounds, navigational elements, or sidebars. This color supports the primary color by adding interest and helping to organize the website into distinct sections. You can interchange primary and secondary colors between different sections or pages to maintain a cohesive design. However, avoid doing this too frequently, as it can disrupt the overall look and feel. And 10% should be the accent color, used selectively to highlight critical information and calls to action. This includes buttons, links, or icons that need to stand out and catch the user's attention. The limited use ensures that these elements draw the eye without overwhelming the user. Also, neutral colors, which are black, white, and grays, can be used in conjunction with the 60-30-10 rule. These are considered more universal colors that complement other color schemes without clashing, and are typically used for text, outlines, and shadows, and to enhance space and clarity. I don't consider them in the 60-30-10 percentages. Now, a critical mistake I see designers make is overusing the accent color. Save your accent color exclusively for interactive elements and critical information. This creates a consistent pattern that users instinctively understand. Bright color means important or click here. This site is a great example with the 60-30-10 rule applied. The orange accent is used for buttons, important headers, and key elements, which makes them stand out on the page. So you've put together an amazing palette. Before hitting publish and confidently sipping your celebratory coffee, or chocolate fix if you've dealt with too many beige logos, there's one essential reality check we can't ignore. And yes, it affects every single designer every day: accessibility. And here's what I've learned that's rarely discussed: designing for accessibility actually improves your design for everyone. The most fundamental accessibility principle for color is contrast. WCAG or WCAG guidelines recommend a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1 between text and its background for normal text, and 3 to 1 for larger text. So how do you know you nailed it? Tools like Adobe Contrast Checker quickly validate how readable your content truly is. Think of it like spell check for your eyes. Let's talk about color blindness, because yes, your dream color palette may look dramatically different to roughly 344 million people, or around 4.3% of the global population. Now, there are several types of color blindness, and tools like Adobe Color's accessibility features let you check how your palette appears across these different types of color vision. There's deuteranopia, which impacts red-green distinction, and protanopia, which impacts red-green distinction but in a different way. And then there's tritanopia, which affects blue-yellow perception. Point is, people with color blindness see your designs differently. Does this mean avoiding certain colors completely? Not necessarily. Here's my approach to beautiful and accessible colors. First, verify contrast. I use tools like Adobe Color to directly check and adjust contrast ratios between colors in my palette. This lets me efficiently fine-tune specific brand colors with immediate feedback. Second, use lightness variations, not just hue. Different types of color blindness affect different hues, but lightness differences are perceived by almost everyone. And third, never rely on color alone. Always pair color indicators with secondary cues like icons, patterns, or text labels. But there's still one frustrating reality we all face with color online, which is the struggle of cross-platform color inconsistencies. Honestly, what works flawlessly on your color-calibrated, pixel-perfect, Retina-screen Mac can end up looking like a fluorescent nightmare on your client's budget monitor from 2012. So why does this frustrating transformation happen? It's the reality of how colors work digitally. OLED screens boost saturation, LCDs vary in color temperature, and everyone's brightness and contrast settings are complete wildcard territory. Add in screen protectors, night mode features, and aging displays, and suddenly your carefully chosen colors look like an Instagram filter gone rogue. And here's the thing, you can't control the exact color experience for every user. Believe me, I've tried. So what's the solution? Design for flexibility rather than pixel perfection. Here's my approach. I create color palettes with enough contrast that they still work even when slightly shifted. I avoid color combinations that are just barely distinguishable from each other. And I use the squint test. If you squint your eyes and can still distinguish the important elements and hierarchy of your design, it's likely to work across various viewing conditions. Bottom line, embrace the fact that you can't control everything. Give your colors breathing room, plan for variation, and you'll instantly decrease unnecessary stress. Yours and your clients. It's all about being strategic and adaptable. And you know what else requires adaptability? AI. Seriously, these tools are completely changing how we create websites. And I'm not just talking about making things faster. They're actually reshaping the entire design workflow from concept to launch. Next up, I'll reveal ways AI will transform how you design websites.